Arthur Brooks.
John Popola, so great to see you.
To Dad Saves America.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So I will say right out of the gate that your assistant, your person, Olivia, reaching out saying like, "Hey, Arthur's in town. He wants to come on the show." It was like, I finally made it.
I thought I was the one making it.
You're a busy man. It's just great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to see you again.
So,
we've done so much fun creative damage together over the years.
We have. So for those who are like, what's going on here? What's this chummy stuff? We made a documentary together that was really just me trying to channel you into a filming experience called The Pursuit.
Right. You followed me around the world for 3 years.
It was something. And you have a new book that we're going to get into about the search for meaning, which in some ways for me is like what this show is about.
Yeah.
It's about how do we, as men, as dads, and as parents, how do we do that for ourselves? How do we set our kids up to do it?
Yeah.
To be adults,
to
have a meaningful adult life.
Yeah.
I want to start there.
Yeah. And by the way, congratulations on the show.
Oh.
It's terrific.
Well.
It's interesting, but it's also beautiful. Because you're a filmmaker.
Yeah, we were geeking out about the lighting before.
Yeah,
I take pride in it. There was a hypothesis at the start that was like that looking good would matter, and we went through a period of like maybe it won't matter, but I think it does.
I think it does because look, if you're going to have a conversation that's going to last an hour or two, and you're going to look at it, it's better to look at something that's pleasing as opposed to something that's garish and ugly and.
I think if I couldn't have things be beautiful, I'd rather do something else. It's a value that I have for our work that just
spoken like a true filmmaker.
What does it mean to be an adult to you? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's on the face of it, it's a chronological phenomenon. It's getting older is what it comes down to. But I actually look at it as a behavioral scientist, and as somebody who has a science background, I'm really interested in how stages of life give you different experiences on life and make it possible for you to give a different experience on life to other people on the basis of your experience and the basis of how your mind and body and brain are actually changing. And a large part of my research has been about how people, when they go from childhood to adulthood into later adulthood, how things like their intelligence change, how things like their personality changes. I'm super interested in the phenomenon, how people in adulthood just naturally, the trajectory of change in their lives. So what does it mean to become an adult? For me, it's a question of becoming wise. It's a question of becoming better. It's a question of becoming happier if all goes well, indeed. And so perhaps that's the definition of successful adulthood. But really, that's what it comes down to. And that's one of the reasons that societies that value older people do better. They actually do better. They're richer, they're happier, they have more intact families. And that's one of the things that's actually most troubling in a sort of an internet-based society that valorizes youth more than anything else, is that we're shearing off this source of wisdom and experience that we get.
That's interesting because when you say societies that value the old, like how do you know that a society does that? I immediately think Japan, as I think a lot of people do. Like there's this sense of actual treating like the elders like they're wise instead of like they're just a bunch of boomers.
That's respect. That's respect. But mostly it's like, so you and I are old capitalists. So let's talk markets. It's the extent to which older people are valued by markets because they have a lot to share, a lot to give. They have a lot of experience. And it's interesting because there's a lot of theories, until relatively recently, especially with the advent of vaccines and antibiotics, when life expectancy was quite a lot lower. Now, most of lower life expectancy was children and babies dying, but you would die of preventable diseases at relatively early ages. And that's one of the reasons that so much technological advance has happened relatively recently, is because you had a storehouse of experience and knowledge in the old who were able to be kept alive. And that's a huge explosion of economic value and cultural value and social value. I mean, you can't invent electricity if people are dying at 40. Is what it comes to. Because everybody has to Every generation has to reinvent everything again and again and again and again. And if people are living to 70 and 80, you just don't have to do that. And societies that value that by allowing people to work for a long time and that have a lot that are, where we invest in people who are old, those are the societies that I really want to live in, because those are the best societies. That's where we can prosper the best.
So someone might hear that and say, work until you're real old. What kind of scam is that? I want to be able to retire.
That chill on the beach at 62, take Social Security at 62. I'm going to be 62 next May. I'm not done. I'm just getting started. Now, again, I don't know. My dad died at 66. I don't know. I mean, God's going to give me a certain number of years to be sure, but I want to be generative and creative for as long as I possibly can. Does that mean I make a bunch of money? No, but it means I have something to add. I have love to give. I have things to teach. It's interesting, John, because the best teaching evaluations go almost uniformly at my university to professors over 60 and even over 70. And so when junior professors come to Harvard and they get assigned a mentor like me, because I'm now an old guy, and the junior guys were 30, women and men who are new professors will say, what's the secret to getting really, really great teaching evaluations? And I say, get old. Because pattern recognition improves. The store of ideas and examples, actually, the library gets bigger. That's crystallized intelligence. And that's something that it's incredibly important to allow people to become the teachers that they're supposed to be. And you'll be your best teacher when you're in your 70s, by the way. So, go to the gym and take care of your health. And if you're doing something that really requires a huge library of information, if you're a historian, for example, historians do half of their work after age 65 and half before. And the better half is after 65.
I mean, I guess that makes sense because exactly. You've got this accumulation, not just of sort of stored knowledge, but also the quality of your intuitive choices is there. Like your gut tells you better things.
Yeah. So what does it mean to be an adult? To be a good adult? Virtue, wisdom, experience, to love people enough to actually lift them up behind you. And that's the kind of society that I think we need to build, is one that actually values old people to do what old people do well.
All right, here's your obligatory reminder to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. It really actually does help us out a lot. When we're trying to book awesome new guests, they look at how many subscribers are on the channel and they say, yep, this is worth doing. And I want to bring the best possible people to you that I can. Speaking of which, let's get back to the conversation.
What about Stoicism? So, in a way, this channel, this show was born first as a documentary exploring what was happening with Gen Z, kind of in the coddling of the American mind sense.
Yeah.
And I had been thinking about the fact that the reticence to take risks, the reliance on essentially emotion driving your reactions to things. I did like a list of 10 things that constitute an adult for me, and they all end up being basically kind of stoicism. They're the opposite of when you say someone's acting like a baby. So, okay, if somebody treats you poorly, you take a deep breath and process. You don't punch them back immediately. You don't throw temper tantrums.
You don't go home from work crying.
It's just,
when you get a relatively bad evaluation from your boss.
it's all, and I showed this list to Lenore Skenazy, and she's like, that's a very masculine list. What about caring? What about empathy? It's like, okay, fine. Those are important too.
It's called Dad Saves America.
But what about stoicism? What about having control of your emotions?
Yeah, very important. And control over your emotions is all about understanding of your emotions. So I teach my students, the most important skill I teach my students, these are MBAs, by the way. These are MBA students at Harvard who are going to be the masters of the universe, and they know how to manage everything except their own emotions. They don't know how to manage their emotions because nobody has ever taught them. And the management of your own emotions.
These are MBA students?
Yeah, because to be fair, they're young adults, and to be doubly fair, they're Gen Z, in which they've been told to be authentic and that to trust their feelings. And that's wrong. That's just wrong. What we need is metacognitive control of ourselves. We need our prefrontal cortex to be managing our limbic systems. The limbic system is the console of tissue evolved between 2 and 40 million years ago that takes signals that you've discerned from the reptilian parts of your brain in the back of your head and turns them into a language called emotions. All emotions are signals of threats and opportunities that you've discerned. And when you have negative emotions, it means you've discerned a threat, something to avoid. And when you have positive emotions, that means there's an opportunity and you should approach it. That's all feelings are. The problem is when feelings manage you and you don't manage your feelings. You need to understand them, you need to interpret them, and you need to decide how to behave in accordance with them and decide to behave how you want to behave as opposed to how you feel. That's emotional self-management. And a whole suite of techniques is called metacognition, which is understanding your own emotions and managing them. And that's the most important thing I teach my students.
How do they respond to this? I sort of buried the lead that you're a Harvard professor because I'm not sure if it's
is that a flex anymore?
Is it a flex? I kind of feel like I feel bad for you that you have
the
to
place is so awesome. It's really. I mean, it's like don't believe the hype. It's great. It's great. It's still a great university. It's the greatest university in the world, maybe for some. Yeah, I love it.
It's the oldest U.S. university.
Yeah, 1638. I mean, the first books in the New World came in 1630. So. Actually, 1636 is when Harvard was founded. So, my family predates Harvard, but, pikers.
I, on this channel, have made Harvard the whipping boy more than once, especially in the aftermath
It's
of
easy to
10-7.
do. Look, it's easy to do. And there's been a lot of trouble in higher ed for sure. But the truth is always complicated with institutions. Institutions are good and bad. Institutions have real costs and real benefits to them. And I know the end of the story, Harvard's going to be fine. Harvard's going to be fine. And it does a lot of good. And it's better if we recognize and fix the things that are not good. And that's just a mark of maturity.
We both place ourselves broadly on the right, so to speak. Although the left-right thing has gotten more complicated in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
But kind of meaningless. But
you and I know what we mean. And when we're classical liberals, we believe in, you and I both believe in that the free enterprise system is the best system for lifting people out of poverty. That mostly traditional family-based values are the best way to achieve happiness and harmony in a society, and that the United States is a gift to the world, and that we should treat the power that we have, the soft and hard power we have, as a gift to the world.
I agree with all of that. My relationship to the soft and hard power in the world has always been a little complicated.
Yeah, as it should be, because you're a discerning intellectual person.
But I think so. You had been, for a long time, I think, really a shining light in the world of sort of I would say like the mainstream of the American right as the president of the American Enterprise Institute.
That's right. Before I was a Harvard professor, before I was a left-wing Harvard professor, I was a right-wing think tank president. Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the things that's happening, and it ties into meaning, and we'll get to this stuff about, you've got so much to say about happiness and meaning that are in your book. But I think one of the things that's connected to this that we're seeing with our boys and with this rising generation of young people who've kind of, it's 2026. We are looking at this political environment we're in, and it's fractured. Like, I do feel like we're in a fractured America.
Right.
And it's hard for our boys to know where to, like, plant their flag and what's true and build around it, if that makes sense. How do you think about that? And let's start not with the politics of Republicans and Democrats or any particular policy, but
that's just so boring, right?
It's not that interesting.
Yeah.
But what kind of person are you? What is like your belief set that's core?
Yeah.
Like, how do
I think about it with my kids? I mean, my kids are older than your kids. Your kids are teenagers, and my kids are in their 20s. All three of my children are in their 20s. My kids have kids, so I'm thinking about I have 4 grandsons at this point. And so time marches on. And the truth of the matter is that the identifiers, the ideological identifiers in the United States, they tend to be really fluid, and they always have been. I mean, they really always have been. What did it mean to be a Republican when you were Abraham Lincoln versus, Taft He was the complete isolationist impulse that's frequently run through the Republican Party in the run up to World War II. What did it mean to be a Republican when they were slapping wage and price controls onto the American economy, strapping that albatross onto the in the early 1970s.
Poor Richard Nixon.
Yeah, I know.
One of our smartest presidents, but also made a lot of
unappreciated. But
he's making a comeback.
Nixon is back.
He's getting rehabilitated.
Yeah, because everything he did just pales in comparison to what the presidents do nowadays. So, the truth is that these have always been really porous monikers. The meaning of this. What really matters is, and what the really great thing is about growing up in the United States is that there's kind of a self-inventing ideological structure. And this is what I really love. I mean, my kids vote differently than I do. They do. My kids are significantly to the right of me. All of them.
So it's full Gen Z boy effect.
Yeah, well, kind of. But
what about your daughter?
She's a second lieutenant in the U.S. Marine Corps. Oh yeah. And she's hardcore, man. I mean, she's literally trained to kill. As we speak, she's actually camping out in the field down at Quantico, and they're shooting machine guns and sleeping in sleeping bags, and she's getting ready to lead a platoon of enlisted Marines.
Very AEI of her, Arthur.
Yeah, and her older brother was a scout sniper. He was a special ops Marine too. And so I've got two military, and my oldest son was not military, but he works for a defense contractor, and they have very nuanced views on things that I haven't really questioned. And what's really nice about that is not that I agree with them on the things that they say. I think that they're wrong in a lot of ways, but they make me question things that I never really questioned. And that's a beautiful thing.
Like
that's
what?
A beautiful thing. They make me question, for example, I was president of AEI, and I'm really comfortable with the projection of American power and diplomacy and development all around the world. And I really am.
I remember something that which is when we were first making the movie. I think this might have been the first time I visited the AI office. And at this point, I'm very much like a Ron Paul libertarian, and I've still got quite a bit of that in me.
You can take the Ron Paul out of the boy, but you can't take the boy out of.
I went to his 90th birthday last August. Somebody from your office was like, "Here, you can set up in this room, and as however long you want." And I look, and it's John Bolton's office. So keep going.
Yeah. So the truth is that there's a lot to question about how to do foreign policy in a judicious and prudent way, and just being dogmatic about things is not going to cut it. And so having your 20-something-year-old kids question these ideas and make you defend them, and you realize you got a point, is a useful thing to do. I mean, I'll never become an isolationist. I'm not going to say, what, we need more tariffs. We need to cut down all this free trade. I mean, no, that's not actually how I feel about these things. But the truth is there's not just one side to these issues. And the beautiful thing is that we live in a society where you can have strong disagreements within your family. And at least until relatively recently, it's okay. It's okay. Now, of course, the political parties are dedicating to turn us on each other. They're productizing us. The media and politicians are productizing us through our own hate, because negative emotion is always the lever that dictators use. Fear, anger, disgust, and sadness are the emotional levers that are used by dictators to turn people against each other to gain more power or votes or money or jollies or attention. And so there's a lot of that going on. It's like 1 in 6 Americans is not talking to a family member because of politics today. But 5 in 6 have differences and are still talking. That's a great thing about this country. It's just interesting to have these differences of opinion with people that you really love and trust. That's a really great thing, I have to say. And the other thing I'm truly grateful about, and people often miss this, because the one thing that hard right and hard left agree on today is that America's crummy and in decline.
Yeah, there's a nihilism that pervades our
It's kind
culture.
of an anti-American viewpoint that our country is screwed up. And it really bugs me, because I got to say, I've lived in different places, and including outside the United States, and I could write on Twitter right now, X, right now, something really disparaging about the President of the United States, and there would be no knock in the night and no jackbooted thug. I don't care what any campus radical is saying. My life is not under threat because I have a weird political opinion. God bless America. How do we not feel gratitude for that?
And as we sit here, like, when we first started working together, the alternative would have been something like Venezuela. Today, it's like London.
Yeah, well, there's no, for
It's
sure.
Canada. It's
Well, I
like,
mean,
well, I'm
but
talking about the rest of the Anglosphere as far as the
UK
problems.
is a particularly egregious example of censorship. And because a part of it is they don't have constitutional protections about speech to begin with. But also it turns out they didn't have cultural protections against speech. They're going to go and they're going to rebound on that. I mean, UK is going to be fine in the end too. There's going to be a lot of casualties from that. But it's a really shocking example of what actually can happen in purportedly free societies, which is why even though I'm great gratitude, I'm also vigilant.
One of the things, you sort of framed us as classical liberals, and I agree like that. I'm very much in that camp, broadly speaking, which is another way. I think maybe today I like to say, I think I'm just fundamentally into Americanism.
Yeah.
Like the Constitution, the structure, the sort of understanding of the fallen nature of man that's built into that, where it's like, no, we're going to separate powers because like people are fundamentally broken and will try to grasp for power. So how do we at least pit these negative forces against each other? That all strikes me as being still the best we've
Spot
ever
on, man. The best we can do.
There's a burn it all down, and I think for my version, there's a lot to burn, there's a lot to repair, there's a lot to tear down,
of course,
but the studs in the house are good. Like it's got good bones, and I feel like there is like this spectrum between like full everything is a catastrophe and no, all of our institutions still work pretty well, which I think is not true. Which is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah.
Which is like, no, we need like really serious change in ways that actually are kind of hard to do.
I agree with that. I do agree with that.
So how do you think about change given like we are built as a country to make change kind of hard.
Right.
And there's a ratchet effect that now is a kind of a problem.
Right.
Like we just sort of have like constant barnacle growth on the hull of the ship.
Right.
And we don't really have great ways of knocking them off en masse when it just becomes impossible.
Well, the answer that I would have given for a long time, because I was the president of a big public policy think tank in Washington, D.C., is that we need to find a way to get better policies. But it's not that I disagree with that. I think that that's not the right order of operations at this point. I used to be on the supply side of good ideas. Now I work on the demand side of good ideas. I work to increase the consciousness that people have about what happiness is and what a happy life is all about, because I want to change culture. Culture is upstream from policy and politics. And if we want a better country, we need a better culture. We need a healthier culture. We need to actually speak the truth to each other in a spirit of love. We need to encourage people to develop the spirituality that should be their destiny, to actually understand who they are as people. And so what we need is more cultural repair than policy repair, because policy and politics actually follow the cultural impulses that we have. It follows the forces of culture. And so that's really why I've gotten into the business that I'm in right now, is I had to go further back in the value chain to actually get this. And that's, I think, my answer to that. Do you want better policy? Do you want better politicians? Do you want better politics? Then have it start at home with the way that you're a father. Have it start in your neighborhood with the way that you're a good neighbor. Have it start in your city where you're a good citizen, getting involved in locally what's actually happening. Think at the micro level about what you're actually doing to make the world a better place around you.
It's one of these things. I totally agree with you that the sense in which one way I think about why the shift from we can engage, we don't even seem to engage in policy debates in America.
Not that much.
Not really. The extent to which there's actual legislation with a public debate. Right. I think the last time I think about that really happening was maybe the Obamacare law. A real national debate about is this good or bad, or is this socialism? Right. What is it? I don't think we've really had anything quite like it since. And I wonder if that is fundamentally a sign of a breakdown of the shared culture of the country, that there's and social media is probably a big part of this, but There was a like 249-yard lines kind of thing that allowed you to actually get into the weeds of policy.
I mean, I think that was somewhat of an illusion. I mean, I think that's something that we think of because we have fading affect bias, which is always remembering things in the past as better than they were, and always seeing the present as worse than it is. So that negativity bias about the present is because we have a bias toward negative emotions so that we're vigilant for threats. And the reason that we have a rosier view of the past is because the discomfort of the moment is no longer useful for us, but the learning and growth that we got from the past is still present. That's why, my students or the alumni at Harvard, they'll get together their 20th reunion and talk about how great that first semester of college was when we all met. They were weeping and calling home because they were so lonely. What they remember is the friendships that they made, and what they've forgotten is the pain that they had in real time. And this is what we do about our country as well. I mean, it's funny because I was actually complaining about this, and I'm guilty as anybody of this. I was talking to, the filmmaker Ken Burns.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him on the phone, and I made some comment about, it's never been worse than this. He says, what? He had just made his film on the Vietnam War at the time, and he said, okay, riddle me this, maestro. He says, how many political bombings occurred in 1968 and 1969? Political bombings in the United States. I'm like, I don't know. 700.
Whoa, what?
Yeah. I mean, there
700
were
political
we've
bombings.
got activism on campuses, which we do, and which is lousy. There's way too much activism. Activism sort of is the problem on campuses because the ratio of activism to inquiry can ruin the entire university experience.
Yeah, I saw one.
And the whole project is turned upside down.
Well, I saw one poll found that in departments of education, something like 45% of the students and the faculty, or maybe it was actually just the faculty, saw their job principally as activism.
Yeah, so that's in certain departments. You could find anything that's blank studies is a lot more activism than inquiry, is a general rule. I mean, not for every single faculty member and et cetera, but that's a common thing. But if you come to a place like the Harvard Business School, no way. No way. Are you kidding me? No, they just want to do their work is what it comes down to. The trouble is when the environment, because of the cultural milieu, is one of activism, that screws up the entire project.
Why? Well, what is it?
Because inquiry requires that you have a dangerous experience. Activism says that there's black and white and right and wrong. You've got to banish a certain point of view. That's what activism is all about. It's like cancel culture is an activist phenomenon that says there's one way of thinking and we got to get rid of people who don't think this particular way. That's antithetical to inquiry. And the inquiry is basically dangerous ideas all the time. I want to feel intellectually unsafe. I want you to say crazy stuff to me. And the crazier it is, the more interested I am in your point of view. That's how inquiries, the culture of inquiry is supposed to work. Okay, it's been bad. It's been bad. But you go back to the 1960s, late 1960s, early 1970s, people were taking over administration buildings with loaded weapons. People were burning down labs. People were placing bombs on campuses and in halls of government. Bombs. That's worse. That's worse. And that's not exactly in my memory. That's a little before you were born, a little after I was born, but it's not, I don't remember, people taking over the chemistry department at, Wisconsin, Madison. I don't remember that. But I tell you, that's in living memory.
But what if the 90s was actually the peak of Western civilization, which is a joke I make.
Yeah,
and I think it's very much a Gen X joke. But there's a part of me that does feel like we have entered a period that we're like what we are as a human.
Yeah.
With all of our foibles and our idiosyncratic like neuroscience biases and all that stuff. We're like the hardware of the human and the software of the society and the technology and the landscape have diverged enough that like we're not necessarily getting a net benefit from our progress the way we used to. And I don't mean to be like pre-modern, although I kind of have gotten more pre-modern.
That tends to happen as you get older. I got news for you. 10 years from now, you'll be like, we got nothing compared to Aquinas.
Well, that one's also rising
true.
fast.
That's actually true. But you get my point. It's like the Middle Ages. I don't know why
make the Middle Ages great again.
They
I've said on more than one
Why do they call it the Dark Ages? That was actually the height of human civilization.
But okay, But we have crossed some kind of Rubicon, I'd say in 2000 with the internet and the things that came next.
Right.
And the thing that has broken my brain a little bit was the collapse in mental health among our kids.
Yeah.
Like literally actually my son's doing great, but our son's
your son's friends.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I saw it firsthand. I saw it with his friends. I saw it with some of his girlfriends who were like nervous wreck disasters. And I'm like, why are you so nervous? And it pointed to something that like, oh, we have not yet achieved whatever new grappling with the world we're in that's necessary to like escape this. Like, like we're treading water.
Right. We're in a psychogenic epidemic. We're in a psychogenic epidemic, which is one of the fancy ways that behavioral scientists like me describe very simple ideas and get tenure in putting the fancy words around them.
Yeah. So what does that mean?
Psychogenic epidemic means that it's a contagious phenomenon that creates great suffering with no biological origin. So that's how a psychogenic epidemic works. And so you see something like eating disorders that suddenly spread all over the place, have no biological origin, but they create they're contagious and they have tremendous amount of suffering. Yeah. So the depression and anxiety that we see, particularly among white young women, I mean, that's the sort of the epicenter of it.
White liberal young women.
Well, John Haidt, John Haidt's data, this is not my data, John Haidt's data that he cites a lot is that 56% of liberal white women under 30 have been diagnosed formally with at least one mental illness. And that's a lot. I mean, and
majority.
Yeah. And again, I'm somebody who dismisses the entire psychiatric complex or, said therapy is all stupid. I'm not one of these guys. But that's a lot. And that means that something is actually up and it's not being fixed by therapy, by the therapy industrial complex.
No, if anything, it's making it worse.
And you've had Abigail Schreier on the show, right?
Not yet, but I mean, I've talked to Abigail, and I'm familiar with the book. Yeah,
that's review for sure.
Well, but like when you tell people to focus on the negative, and talk about it incessantly, that turns out to not be great.
Yeah. And the truth is, therapy is not one thing. The cognitive behavioral therapy tends to be incredibly effective by helping you retrain your mind. It's an approach to metacognition. To self-management when it comes to it, as opposed to simply retreading how much you're bummed out by your mother all the time, which is rehearsing grievance. And so rehearsing grievance and cognitive behavioral therapy, they're both therapy, but the point is that they shouldn't be used, we shouldn't have the same word for it is the way that works.
No, and I've had Dr. Camilo Ortiz on the show a couple times. I've actually had quite a few therapists on the show. I'm not anti-therapy in general to the extent that Abigail might be. Although I think even she actually features Dr. Ortiz in bad therapy quite a bit. But so you've
got an example of something good.
Yeah, so you've got this psychogenic epidemic.
So there are a couple of things to be thinking about. Number one is that there is a cyclical nature that we can't see because of our history. For you and me and everybody listening to us is like a pointillistic painting that you're too close to. You're looking at a Seurat painting, right? And you're like, dots. Oh no. And if you can back up enough, I mean, that's that famous Chinese joke or the joke about, the Chow En-lai was asked, so what's your view of the French Revolution? And his answer is, too soon to tell. That's backing way up from the painting. Oh, it's a bunch of people at a picnic outside, et cetera, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do that. And so you were real conscious of the late 80s is when you came into consciousness. You were unbelievably acutely aware of what was going on in the 1990s and the 2000s and going forward. And so your point of reference is, it's like a lot of the climate debates where you look at a little tiny piece of the curve, right? And you need to back up a lot so you can have a proper understanding of history. If you back up a little bit, generally speaking, the kinds of discomfort that we're having, the political polarization and the trouble with anti-religion or non-spirituality or however you want to look at it, these things tend to go in sort of 50-year cycles. And in the off 25 years, you have this apogee of cultural conservatism. And then in the troughs, the other trough, you get the things that you and I don't like very much. Right. And you have so the early 1970s look an awful lot like, right after COVID or at the very end of COVID.
Yeah. It was funny that 2020 felt like this sort of.
It felt like 1970.
Yeah. It was like a cheap remake of
Yeah. So
early
what was
70s.
the 25-year? What was the 25-year punctuation with the 1997? And that's when Hillary Clinton was talking about militarizing the police. This was like it was too culturally conservative for John and Arthur, right?
I'm getting closer to that
but
one.
where the Democrat Bill Clinton was like fry them all. You know, he was executing prisoners left and right, and now they're talking about prison abolition. And getting and demilitarizing, or not demilitarizing, is disbanding the police. So this is the cycle that we're actually in. And if history kind of repeats itself in the cycle, we're going into a period of significantly higher cultural conservatism over the next 20 and 25 years in particular. And we certainly already see it. We certainly
that's pretty clear.
People see the woke apocalypse has crested. All that means is that we're getting more culturally conservative. And I don't know if history will repeat itself, but it certainly always has.
Why? I'm kind of surprised to hear you describe this sort of cycle, this sort of almost fourth turning-esque type of thing.
And there's no inevitability about this. I don't have a deterministic attitude about that. It's just kind of looking at these. And there's a lot of things that could go wrong, and there's a lot of things that we need to do to make our society as good as we can make it. Once again, starting at the atomic level, starting at the level of you with your kids, et cetera, as opposed to living on the internet and screaming at MSNBC or something.
Well, right. And your book is all about fundamentally it's a book about agency in a lot of ways. What do you do what are the choices within your control that can make your life full of meaning and happiness? And we're going to get to it. But in this cyclical sense, if there is a repetition to it, which I think we all kind of feel,
then what are we going to see?
Well, what is it? Is it the hard times create strong men, create good times, create weak men, create bad times?
There's something like that.
Is that it? Is that what it is?
It's a little bit different than that, of course. But I mean, that's a really clever thing, because you can actually make it into a circle and then put it on and put it on your website or something. But what we ordinarily see is this: American culture is propelled by cultural fads and moral panics. That's how American culture works. And if you don't like the current moral panic or cultural fad, wait a little bit, and you'll get one that's more to your liking.
That's it. And walk me through a couple. Give me a quick sample so I can feel if that is a good hypothesis.
Yeah. So anything that we talk about, and many of the things that everybody's freaking out about on campus, that suddenly everybody starts freaking out about on campus, these are generally moral panics and cultural fads that we typically see. The stuff that we don't see on campus is that we'll see in a populist version of the Republican Party. That's the sort of what they call the woke right. That's the same kind of idea that we see. The identitarianism of the right, our country for our people, and immigrants are just coming here to take our stuff. That's a moral panic and a cultural fad. Nativism is a cultural fad, and immigration is a moral panic. That doesn't mean there's nothing it's all false and all based on lies, but the whole thing is inflaming it suddenly, and this is what we all think. And American culture has always been like that. I'm married to a European, and she's always like, you guys are always on about something. She's a citizen, don't get me wrong.
I just think back to us being in your in-laws' place.
Oh, that's right, because we've been in my in-laws' house in Barcelona together.
And hearing your father-in-law reminisce about how much better the middle class was doing under Franco.
I know. And they locked up his family. That's a classic example of fading affect bias, man. His nephew was born in prison. Right?
No, but the middle class was doing better. It wasn't hollowed out.
A whole section of the family was exiled to Colombia. And so there's a whole part of the family that lives in Colombia because they got kicked out without a passport. Either that or death. It's like, that's great. It was just great. And his point was, however, this sort of valid point, which he made in an awkward way in our movie, right? Which was that most things were worse and some things were better. And that's sort of axiomatically true.
Yeah, one of the things that I struggle with the most on a personal level is after having 5 years of a monstrous commute in between New Jersey and New York City, I I was fried on the Northeast, and I did something I never thought I would do, which is we moved to Texas. We moved to being a flight away from my family, my extended, my parents and my sister and my aunts.
We're a
and all.
very tight-knit Italian family.
Yeah, and it was just like that is like not something. It is like the weakest part of my life that I'm not, that I won't like this weekend just be able to like pop by and say hi to my parents and
Right.
go to Costco with my dad or something.
Right.
Like that sucks.
It's lousy. It's a lousy thing. Right.
And
But
like it was like it was for a reason.
It's 75-25 good.
It's right.
But the 25 isn't good.
No,
and that's just
it's not
like,
good.
see, this is the thing. This is life. Everything has costs and benefits. Every decision that you actually make, every phenomenon that we actually see. And so one of the greatest things about being an adult, getting back to that, is seeing the nuance in that. See, one of the things that when you're 25 years old, it's like 100-0. Like either wokeism is 0% good or 100% good. Well, no. It's like
It's like 98% bad.
But when you think about it, I mean, look, you and I are practicing Catholics, and sort of the excesses that came about in the Me Too movement, right? Which was hard on a lot of people, and arguably there were people who were unjustly accused and had their careers harmed.
Yeah, like Aziz Ansari as an example.
For example, but I'm not sorry that predatory men are paying a price. I'm not sorry about that. I'm not sorry. On the contrary, I mean, men who behave in a particular way toward women, there should be a price to that. And so that's a perfect example.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's man, that there's a whole bunch of stuff like that are simultaneously true and also difficult because there's this broader. Maybe this gets back to that strong men, weak men thing, but there is a grappling with what does it mean to have healthy masculinity that's still masculine in an era that's become more feminine. Yeah. How do you think about that? As a man, you've got two sons.
Yeah, well, I think about that because I'm very, very interested in evolutionary behavioral science. You've got the greatest evolutionary psychologist in the world living in the city, David Buss.
Oh, right.
He teaches at the University of Texas at Austin.
Yeah.
The guy, so
Chris Williamson's a big fan of his.
For sure. And so am I. As a scholar, I don't know him, but I have cited him many times. And he has a very famous book from the 90s that's been updated. It's called The Evolution of Desire. And if you want to understand why people do the weird things that they do, and the exercise in futility that's actually trying to change what we do, what not everybody, but what average people, how they behave as men and women, read that book. If there's one book I can give to an entire generation of young men to understand themselves and understand women, I would give them that particular book because it's so revealing. And this is one of the things, I teach this stuff and there's no controversy whatsoever. And I'll give you an example of how I teach this for speaking to your point. I say that, there are many, many things that men and women want that are the same because we're human beings. And fundamentally, we're more alike than different as human beings.
Yeah, the overlap, it's like these two bell curves and they're offset like this, but there's a lot.
There's a lot. I mean, it's like, and the offset is not very much on most things. But the evolution of a sexually dichotomous human species is one in which certain people do certain things and other people do other things such that we can combine our labors and do better as a species, right? And so the result is, for example, that women who bear children and suckle their young they have a much bigger investment in children, a much bigger investment in making sure that their sexual partner is true to them and takes care of the offspring. Men, on the other hand, are different because they have this incentive to actually propagate their gene pool as widely as possible. And but explains a whole lot of behavior. And so it also explains the way to, as I'll tell my students, that fundamentally, there's one big thing that men makes them happy in their marriage, and that's being admired by their wives. And there's one big thing that women really need in a marriage, and that's to be adored by their husbands. And that's the adoration, admiration dichotomy. Now, that's not every single person because you can't
unpack that for me.
So
and what those mean, what those two things mean that are different than each other.
So what it comes down to is that Lisa needs to hear from you. I would fight a tiger with my hands for you, and only you. And you need to hear from Lisa. That is the biggest gazelle that anybody has ever dragged into this cave. You are so big and strong. That's going to feed our family for 2 weeks. That's the and again, there's more to it than that. You have to be nice and
this rings true. This rings true.
Of course. And this mutual respect is table stakes. Respect one another, love one another. But the manifestation of respect and love is different between men and women. And that's the beauty of it. That's why that's why it's fun. That's why it's so awesome, right? Is what it comes down to. And that doesn't mean that every single person, every single man is the same way, and every single woman is the same way. And, and some men would prefer to be with men and some women would prefer to be with women. I get it. The multiplicity of the human experience and the variety, human difference, human diversity actually exists. All I'm talking about is in the main, we're evolved. We're evolved because we're still animals and our brains have been evolved. And they're still the same kind of as they were in the early Pleistocene. 250,000 years ago. And that's an example of that. And to the extent that we understand those tendencies, we're going to do a lot better and be a lot happier.
One of the things that I think has contributed maybe singularly to the discomforting of our times to me is we're like in increasingly disembodied times.
Yeah.
We spend a lot of time in a disembodied state, connecting through these screens, and we're like playing an avatar video game.
Yes, so this is a form of Gnosticism, fundamentally. Gnosticism is that the body isn't real and the soul is the only real thing. And you are living a kind of a technologically mediated Gnostic cult if you're living in a simulation, which we are. You remember in 1999 when the Matrix came out,
right?
And it was crazy, man. I mean, it's like
I just rewatched the Matrix this year.
It's a super good movie.
It's
a super good movie. But here's the thing: it wasn't science fiction. It was prediction. It was an AI, and the AI was actually using human energy to fuel itself. And the way that it did that was by keeping humans pacified, by putting them in these pods, running a simulation that was pleasant, a simulation of life.
But not too pleasant, remember.
Yeah.
It had to be just broken enough for us not to reject it.
But it had to be so realistic that the year was 2199 and everybody in the movie thought they were in 1999, which is the year that the actual movie was made.
The peak of Western civilization.
We're in the Matrix, John. We're in the Matrix. We are. I mean, if you go to work on Zoom and you date on apps and your friends are on social media and you get your sense of achievement from gaming, you're living in the Matrix. You're living in the Matrix. And that's the problem, because there's a lot that you can simulate, but the one thing you can't simulate is the meaning of your life. That explains the explosion of depression and anxiety in our world.
So let's start digging into this. Let's start with the big one. Or maybe we end up getting to it cumulatively. When you say, like, it's very easy to say the problem is the search for meaning. Mateo, my older son, read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Right. A great book that everybody should read.
It really is like the book. I thought I had read it, and then I realized I hadn't, and I read it maybe 2 years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh. Like, this is the most important book I've read in like the past 25 years.
People only read the first half. The second half is actually in a way more profound because it explains the school of psychiatry that he founded based on this search for meaning.
Well, and one of the things he describes that happiness is something that is a bank shot. It is not pursued directly, but it ensues through the pursuit of service and having purposeful pursuits. Right. And the other thing he does is he talks about the sort of entitled, coddled nihilists of the 1950s.
Yeah, once again, making my point about Seinfeld.
Yeah, like his description of like the cultural deprivations of the 1950s sound like it's describing 2025.
A grouchy old guy. Kids these days. There's nothing to it. Plato talked about kids these days. Woe be unto this generation, said the Lord in the New Testament. This generation, there's nothing new in actually seeing something like this. But to your point about the bank shot about happiness, now happiness is what I teach. The science of human happiness is what I teach. It's absolutely the case. You say, I just want to be happier. Well, you're not going to get happier. What you need to do is to pursue the macronutrients of happiness. And to understand what they are, you need to take it apart. And one of them is meaning. The other two are satisfaction and enjoyment. And those are the three things you need to get good at, understand the science on, change your habits, and share with others. And then you'll actually become a happier person. Not by trying to be happier, but by trying to enjoy your life properly. It's not pleasure, different. It's taking satisfaction in your experiences and accomplishments and activities and finding the why of why you walk the earth. And the last one is what this new book is about. Why we can't do that anymore, where to look for it, and then how to do it.
Let's start walking through your prescription especially with the lens on our boys.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously our girls have a lot. I think our girls, we get to our girls through our boys in a lot of ways. Because one of the things that I feel like I've actually like been able to escape is I met my wife at work before the apps.
In the before times?
It was the before times.
Yeah.
And then my son was born and I was 28 years old and it was like I was like I had the old way life.
Yeah.
But our I think all the old ways architecture is still there in the sense that like on average women want to be with a man who's capable and is probably like
that she admires.
Right, and what are going to be the markers of admiration? They're going to be a bunch of things that if you haven't done them, you've really reduced the pool. Like if you're not as well educated, for better or worse,
there's no good resource cues. There's no good commitment cues. The two things are commitment and resources that make you admirable fundamentally, because those are a mark of your moral impeccability, your character, your stick-to-itiveness, your ability to work hard, your ability and willingness to actually stay with something. Those are discerned through commitment to you through thick and thin, baby, and through resources, which is your ability to post day after day after day. Is what it comes down to. So I tell guys, look, the secret, you got two jobs. Adore her and be admirable. Those are your two jobs. That's it. Well, what if I don't feel it? I don't care. Adore her and be admirable. Easy. It's actually not easy. It's simple.
Yeah.
It's simple because we're simple, right? We dudes, we're simple. Do the simple thing. And what does it mean to be admirable? Figure it out. You kind of know. Figure it out. Being a liar, being lazy, these are not admirable things. Not sticking up for your beliefs, not admirable. Not being loyal, completely, impeccably loyal to your wife, the mother of your children, not admirable. Everybody knows that. That's a really important thing. Okay, what does it mean to adore her? You know that too. You know what that means to actually do that. And to transcend your emotions and to decide to adore somebody and to be that person on whom you lay your eyes as you take your dying breath. That's it. It's the meaning. That's how we find meaning.
I think one of the things that's been you were mentioning your boys and that you're a grandfather. I think in both cases, both your sons are well below what is now the median age for becoming fathers.
They got married at 22 and 23 and had their first sons at 23 and 24.
So like my dad was 23 when I was born.
Yeah.
So I'm like your grandchildren actually.
My boys met their wives, one at an internship at the American Enterprise Institute, fishing off the company pier, and the other on the beach when he was serving in the Marine Corps. He was at Camp Pendleton and the beach in San Clemente where she grew up. They met the old-fashioned way in person.
Like straight out of a movie. It's like that. Is that like a Top Gun scene? I feel like that's a Top Gun scene.
Probably. It's like, yeah, but I'm not sure that my kids are as reputable. They are now.
But I think for a lot of young guys and girls, you've jumped ahead to how to treat your wife.
Yeah. But this is the big thing, man. You want to raise good boys? Love their mom. It's funny. People ask me all the time, how do I raise my kids in the faith? So my observant Jewish friends ask me this. My Muslim friends ask me this. A lot of Catholics ask me this because so many people have fallen away. I mean, Pew says that 840 Catholics leave the Catholic Church for every 100 who enter. It's John, it's catastrophic. Okay, so what do I do to make sure that my kid is not one of those 840? And there's an answer. The answer has nothing to do with what you tell your kid. Nothing. You could talk to your kid in a foreign language. All that matters is what he sees. And there's a ton of research on this. But it's interesting because when I was a little boy, my dad was the biggest human I'd ever seen. I mean, he was like 6'2" and he probably weighed 3,000 pounds. I don't know. He's like, and I remember asking my brother Jeff, do you think Dad could lift the corner of the house?
What a great little boy thing to think about your dad.
Like now it's like I realize he was a math professor. He couldn't anyway. So and my dad would have never been on his knees in front of another man. Never. But he was on his knees by the side of my bed every single night. That's what it meant to be a man. Is to bow in humility before a greater force than him. That's what it meant to be a strong man. Was to acknowledge the Lord. That's what it meant. You want your kids to grow up and be religious? Be religious. You want your kids to grow up and not be a drunk? Never have them see you drunk. You want them to grow up and be honest? Never have them see you lie to anybody under any circumstances, no matter what the cost. That's it. That's what it comes down to. Do you want them to be as happy as they can possibly be? What's the number one predictor of that? A happy marriage. So therefore, do you want your kids to have a happy marriage? Never have them seeing not loving their mom. Adore her.
You've written and talked about contempt and the role of contempt in destroying relationships. Talk about that, because it's really important, and it's something that, I'm now over 20 years married. I mean, how long have you and Esther?
34.
Yeah. You guys have a great relationship.
We're blessed with that. We're blessed with a highly contentious and blissfully happy marriage. She's Spanish.
Yeah.
It's like fighting is a form of basic communication.
I'm actually surprised how little I actually fight with Lisa, considering that we're both Italian and like can be fiery, and it's not never, but it's not that often. Yeah. But when it is, it's explosive. So what's the secret? How do you keep a marriage alive?
So you asked first about this idea of contempt, and the idea of contempt, or at least it's entered the modern vernacular from the great John and Julie Gottman. They run the Gottman Marriage Lab at the University of Washington in Seattle, and they've brought thousands of couples back together again who are on the brink of divorce. This guy's a hero. John Gottman is anybody who can keep mom and dad together. Is a hero. Not every marriage can be saved. I got it.
But that's like multi-generational savior that you've done.
It's just unbelievable how good.
Yeah.
So, and his number one thing that he talks about is avoiding this complex negative emotion called contempt. Now, there's basic negative emotions. This sort of goes back to emotions 101. There's 4 basic negative emotions: fear, anger, disgust, and sadness. Those are the big 4.
Anger, disgust, and sadness.
And we all have them. And people feel like special, unique emotional flowers. We're all the same. It's like we all have the same kitchen with the same appliances and ingredients, and we figure out what to make in our kitchen. But we're all equipped in the same way, because emotions are a biological phenomenon. They're produced in the limbic system of the brain to give you an alert to, as I mentioned before, threats and opportunities. And when you are experiencing anger, disgust, sadness, and fear, it means that you have ascertained a threat that you should avoid. That's why you have a specific negative emotion that's being produced in a specific part of your limbic system. You're feeling fear or anger. That's the amygdala, primarily, at different parts of the brain as well. The sadness is the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, which is this fear of loss. It's this loss. It's this aversion that we have to loss. If you're feeling other parts of the brain affect different emotions. But my point is that basically these exist there's a biological motive that these things exist. That's important for us to understand. Now, there's complex negative emotions as well, where you mix a couple of them. Okay. And the most dangerous in human relations is called contempt, which is a mix of disgust and anger. Anger and disgust. Anger is a hot emotion that's actually not correlated with divorce. Thank God, or I wouldn't be married 34 years.
So getting hot and screaming and getting like angry
that's not correlated with divorce. Only if you actually insult and inject the other negative emotion of disgust. Disgust is a signal of a pathogen that might kill you. The insula, the insular cortex in the brain, mediates disgust. It makes you say, that smells dead, that looks rotten, that blood, whatever it happens to be. It makes you feel disgust because you're evolved before the advent of vaccines and antibiotics, obviously, to avoid certain things. Your disgust reflexes saved you again and again and again from eating something that's rotten and having bacteria give you sepsis and die. That's what it comes down to. You should never deploy it against another human being. But of course, demagogic leaders use disgust all the time. The Nazis refers to the Jews as rats for a reason. The Hutus called the Tutsis cockroaches for a reason. And your favorite politician, whoever he or she happens to be, everybody watching us, will refer to the other side as disgusting. And when they're doing it, they're trying to stimulate your insular cortex to give you a disgust reflex that will hijack everything else, because you'll panic. You'll panic. You'll dehumanize people immediately if you reduce them to the level of a pathogen. Now imagine mixing that with anger. That's contempt. That turns it ice cold. And that's what people do to each other all the time, even loved ones. John Gottman shows that the predictor of people getting divorced who love each other is eye rolling. Because eye rolling is like, that's contempt. Sarcasm is contempt. Derision is contempt. That's dismissal is contempt. And that's a big predictor of how couples are going to fall apart, is treating each other with contempt. And that's a habit of communication. And so the key thing is, interestingly, as Gottman shows and many other social psychologists have shown in their research, that actually couples still love each other, but they think the other one hates them. That's called motive attribution asymmetry, where I love you, but I think you hate me, and you love me, but think I hate you.
It's like a collective illusion.
It's a collective illusion. It really is kind of like, Todd Rose's collective illusion, but at the level of a couple, right? Which is a really interesting phenomenon because it's based on an error. So if you can retrain yourself to actually say, actually, I love you. The problem is I don't think you love me. And you say, no, actually, I love you, and I thought you didn't love me. This is how you repair couples that are on the rocks and have a really, really bad communication set of habits.
One of the things that that I think has been lost or is just not prioritized in our culture for our kids, for any of us, is that the grass is not greener most of the time. My dad, I told my this is kind of chauvinistic, but I was coming out of one of the RCIA classes with Matteo, this sort of adult right that I was telling you about before we started rolling.
Those of us who don't know, this is when you're being inducted into the Catholic Church as an adult. You go through the returning, the RCIA program.
Yeah, so Matteo was senior year. He hadn't gotten Eucharist and reconciliation. He wasn't confirmed.
Because you and your family became more observant as you got a little bit older.
Yeah. The past 5 years we've become a lot more observant, and it's been an incredible gift. And
you're on cue, by the way. This is what, after 40 is when people start to, no, for sure. And there's a reason for this, John. Let me take a side note on why this is actually a side note.
This would be helpful.
So early in adulthood, one of the things that people say is, how can I believe in a good and merciful and awesome God when I see children suffering? And the reason is because that's a cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonances are incredibly obnoxious to young adults who want a clean world where everything makes sense. When you're a young adult and you have a high level of fluid intelligence, but you have a low level of crystallized intelligence, everything needs to make sense. And you're extremely uncomfortable when it isn't. And that drives a lot of people away from Islam, drives a lot of people away from Judaism, a lot of people away from Christianity, which talks about the fact that God is love. Right. And they say, yeah, really?
Right.
But
the problem of evil and all that.
But then something happens, and what happens is when you're particularly past 40, you're a lot more comfortable with cognitive dissonance because all of life is one big, long cognitive dissonance. Nothing makes sense. There's all kinds of messiness in your life. You come to okay, I've been married 20 years and I'm madly in love with the person I hate. What? How does that even make sense? It means I madly love her. That's the vehicular language of my marriage. But right now I kind of feel like I hate her. And those are two things that you can, because you're mad, you can hold things in tension because you realize that the world is an incredibly messy place. And you say, you know what? This doesn't have to make sense. This doesn't have to make sense. And the Bible is full of this, by the way. It's like Esther and I were reading, on Sunday we were reading Job, because the book of Job is the way to understand suffering. Is the biblical method for it, but it's also super existentially profound. And in the beginning, there's this kind of bet between good and evil that Job, who's a man of God, will curse God if everything turns against him in his life. And so everything turns against him in his life. His kids are wiped out and they steal all his cattle.
And like all of his friends are being like, why haven't you
must have done
forsaken
something,
God?
and you must have done something wrong in the whole thing. And the very end of the book, in chapter 30, he never turns on God. His wife says, curse God and die. No, I will not. He says. But in chapter 38, he puts God in the dock because he has a direct conversation with God in chapter 38. And he's like, I'm your boy. I mean, I was there all along. I was a good man. I never did anything wrong. And you did all this stuff to me. What gives? I want an explanation. And God is like, okay, you're so smart? Huh. If you're so smart, tell me why I made the heavens and the earth. You must know if you're so smart. You're demanding this information, so you must be so smart. You must understand that. So I'll happily fill you in on why you had some earthly suffering once you explain to me why I made the heavens and the earth. Oh, you don't know? Oh, maybe you don't know everything. Maybe everything isn't so simple. And that's the level of comfort that you gain in your 40s. It's like, yeah, there's a lot I don't know, and there's a lot of good out there, and there's a lot of bad out there, and they can coexist. And you say, I want back in. I want back in.
That, man, have I experienced this on a lot of dimensions. One of which is I've gotten less ideological in a lot of ways.
Because of the cognitive dissonance that you're more comfortable with before, because the world isn't dichotomous, because of the binary black and white nature of the world doesn't describe the world to you as well as it used to.
Now, some of it's not gone.
You have opinions.
Some of it's like,
but you know,
there's certain things that people want to like that involving children where I'm like,
yeah,
fire comes out of my mouth, nose, and eyes.
I got it. But there are lots and lots of things. Like, for example, we took the whole vector of your opinions, right? Most of which, probably 99% of which I share, right? So the vector of my opinions about ideological opinions, political opinions, you know perfectly that some of them are wrong. You don't know which. You need to know first. And the only way you're going to know that is if you're exposed to people who disagree with you.
Yeah, this is profoundly true.
And this is super important. And, I've explained this to politicians as well. I was talking to an assembled group of one of the parties in Congress, all of the members of Senate and House in one of the parties. And I said, how many of you wish we lived in a one-party state? No hands. You just told me that you're grateful for the other party. Axiomatically. I mean, by construction, you just informed me of the fact that you're grateful that you live in a country that doesn't have just one party because you didn't want to live in a one-party state, which means you're grateful not for your party, but for the other party. That's how we actually need to think, and that's how we increasingly can. We kind of evolve into that in a little way. And you say, yeah, I know there's evil, and I don't get it, and I don't want it to be there, and I'm going to do my best to actually wipe it out and make the world a better place. But man, do I need grace. Man, do I need the divine. Man, do I need that love in my life. And I'm not going to deny that to myself because of something I don't understand. I'm not going to do it anymore.
It's very hard. It's very hard to find humanity in things that you think are evil. It's just really hard.
Yeah.
How do you, aside from like not going on Twitter, which is probably a good place or X, and we don't have to dive deep into this, but like an example for me, like the transgender issue for me, it
blows your fuses out, right?
Every protective impulse gets activated,
right?
And I can intellectually like make the arguments for the good faith efforts and the belief that this doctor, let's say, is trying to do what they think is the least worst thing to try to protect a child or whatever. But like the broader context and the information that is like, nah, you're a person of authority and you did this horrible thing, and I can't.
Well, there's a role even in something that's less culturally polarizing than that. You can even just talk about people where we all kind of agree, where almost everybody agrees that something's wrong. People committing crimes, for example. You don't find a liberal on the street who says, I'm really pro-criminal. I mean, you don't. I mean, they don't want.
not technically.
They have a different approach to it.
Yeah.
So the question
They might
is,
want restorative justice
So the
things that are
question is,
different.
what do you do in response to that? And if there's disagreement about that, then the argument is that you need to persuade. The argument is not that necessarily that you need to coerce the criminals to not be criminals. I got that, but you can't really in a democratic society coerce people who disagree with you to agree with you. You know, this is the greatest book on this is Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
It's a great book.
And of course, it's a great book about how to live an ethical life. And he has this poem in there: "A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still." When you win an argument, you lost the argument. The only thing that you have at your disposal in a fundamentally democratic society is persuasion. And nobody has ever been persuaded by hatred and hostility and contempt, ever. Nobody's persuaded by that. The only thing that persuades people is an understanding of what they're trying to say and an idea that helps them to their objectives with love. That's how we actually have to do that in any of these divisive issues. And it's a hard thing to do because, man, that's not your animal impulse. The human beings have two spaces in which they can act: animal impulse and moral aspiration. And the beautiful prefrontal cortex of the human brain, which is beyond the reason Homo sapien rules, we rock, is because this like, woo, Homo sapiens, the dominant species. Anyway, you can choose because of this prefrontal cortex to stand up to your animal impulses to coerce and harm when you think something is deleterious, and exist in the moral aspiration of persuasion and love. And that's what we're called to do. That's what we're called to do. That's the reason you have a successful 20-year marriage. It's not because you coerce Lisa when you disagree, but you try to persuade her and you're open to persuasion.
One of the things that's been fundamentally important for our marriage, for me, in terms of the choices I make, is like there's a time where, you get upset about whatever, that doesn't matter, but taking a deep breath, like actually time.
Well, of course, because that's metacognition, is allowing the experience of an emotion to reach your prefrontal cortex, which is a slow system. Your limbic system is almost immediate. If you see out of your peripheral vision a car coming toward you and you're in a crosswalk, that will register on the occipital lobe of your brain. In your vision center, that will register as a predator, because your Pleistocene brain can't say Mercedes. It says predator, something big that wants to harm you and perhaps eat you. Within 74 milliseconds, this will have passed into your amygdala, through the hypothalamus of your brain, to your pituitary glands, down to your adrenal glands above your kidneys, and will be spitting out stress hormones, adrenaline. And that your heart will be pounding and you'll be sweating, you'll be jumped out of the way, and you'll have flipped off the driver. And 4 seconds later, your prefrontal cortex will catch up and say, "John, you're a Catholic. You're not supposed to flip off a driver." But your amygdala saved your life.
Is that why when these kind of things happen, there's a kind of this almost out-of-body experience?
Yeah.
Like, I've gotten into near accidents, like a lot of us have, and I've been fortunate to not ever get in a major car accident. But I've had like times where I remember I can just think of a moment of driving, actually back in college, snowy road, car hit some hidden black ice, spun like this across the next lane into the median.
Right.
We were fine. I can like conjure the experience of that with ease, actually. And I remember like the entire spinning around all felt like I was an outside observer.
Right.
And only when we were stopped did it like all catch up.
There's a whole lot of neuroscience on what's actually going on. You know, why time seems to slow down. And there's a lot of neuroscience that talks about how the hippocampus is recording these episodic memories and why it seems to be much slower when it's something outlandish. But it has a lot to do with the fact that you're going to record much, much, much stronger memories, much more vivid memories when your limbic system is highly activated. So your limbic system is going, and it saved your life. And that's you just lay down memory tracks of that. And which you wouldn't otherwise, because, I heard you when you were talking to in the last episode before we're taping this one, and you're talking about how
Delia McCabe.
Yeah, and your nucleus accumbens drove you to work, right? And you don't remember it, right? That's why, because you're not actually recording deeply ingrained episodic memories in your hippocampus because it's something you've done over and over and over and over again, is bypassing whole parts of your brain that you would ordinarily use if it were something more profound and impactful. So that's what's actually going on with that.
What is your advice for the young man who feels like the society is turned against him and actually has a point?
Right.
He is, as we sit here, he's 20 years old. Maybe he's 24. He was in middle school during Me Too.
Right.
His teacher came to class wearing the future is female when he's 10. The contempt, I felt a little bit of contempt.
No, I get
right
it.
there.
I get it.
This,
No,
this stuff
for sure.
happened, and
For
it's just
sure.
like he's 10. But and then he proceeded to have all these experiences in like the peak woke reign of terror time, and now he sits here, and is like, he's there to he doesn't know where to go.
And you don't want him to get red pilled or black pilled or whatever it is, right? I don't know what color pill.
And the dad in me, the like boom, like I'm not a boomer, but I get called a boomer. It's fine. But the boomer dad in me is like, I just want him to find a mate.
Yeah.
I just want him to be happy.
No, there's these simple creatures that are males. There's kind of two things that he needs. He needs a metaphysical relationship with the divine, and he needs somebody who will love him and take care of him, that he can love and take care of. That's what he needs. He needs a woman who will be the love of his life, who will be his soulmate, and he needs a relationship with God. That's what he needs. And that's what we need to encourage young men to do. And the only way you're going to do that is by getting out of the matrix. You will not do that. Why? And here's why. Neurobiologically, the matrix engages the left side of your brain. Real life with mystery and meaning engages the right side of your brain. The right side of your brain asks why questions that can't be answered by AI or typed into a Google search bar. Like, why am I alive? For what would I give my life? Those are right hemisphere questions. The matrix is all about keeping you in the left hemisphere. That's what's going on. And that young man needs to get into the right hemisphere of his brain. The way he's going to do that is by asking deep questions. He's going to do that by falling in love and having his heart broken and trying again. Those are mysterious experiences. He's going to do that by experiencing his relationship with God and serving other people. He's going to do that by finding his calling in his work. He's going to do that by experiencing real beauty, probably for the first time. And he's going to do that, you know how he's going to do that the most? It's by suffering. And not being told that his suffering is evidence that something's wrong with him.
Yeah, it's fun. I was yesterday, a buddy of mine sent me I don't know what this was. It was this female pastor. I don't know if she was Lutheran. It was totally bizarre. She's ragging on Christ, saying, "Pick up your cross and follow me." Mm. It's like heretical on multiple levels. Actually, it's like a heresy against the Bible, but it's also like a heresy against human nature. It's like in my thinnest moments of being the least Catholic, I still knew. I still was like, yeah, but the cross.
No. Sorry.
The cross is real good.
Yeah.
And actually, it's funny because and what I mean by that is, it's so clear now. It's like we've run the experiment of just living in pure comfort.
Yeah.
Like it is the matrix problem. It's like
it's pacified with a kind of a counterfeit experience it's okay. It passes the time, and you get more depressed and more anxious and more lonely because, John, there's one thing you can't simulate, and that's the meaning of your life. You can't simulate the meaning of your life. You have to live the meaning of your life. You can't even solve the meaning of your life. You can only understand the meaning of your life. It's interesting because, the language centers of our brain for about 97% of people are in the left cortex, the left side of the brain. The Broca's area and the Wernicke's area of the brain are where you process, where you pronounce and understand language. The why questions. Why, and I'll give you an example of how the right brain and left brain process this differently. I say, why do you love Lisa?
Yeah.
And anything you tell me now is going to sound trite because you've tried to process that right brain profundity with the left brain triviality.
Well, and this is one of the things too about like the idea of, I have to think about this for a second. Love is really weird.
Love is a right brain experience. Love is something that is weird because it's real, but you can't nail it down. See, it's interesting because in math, my father was a mathematician, and we used to talk about the difference between complicated and complex problems. Complicated problems are those that are really hard to solve.
Lots of parts.
But complex problems are easy to understand and impossible to solve. So a football game is a complex problem. It's very easy to understand. 1 point, the Seahawks get 31 points and the Cowboys get 24 points, and so the Seahawks win. You don't know what's going to happen, which means you can't simulate it, and that's the reason that you watch it, because it's exciting. It's a complex experience. Your toaster is complicated. Your cat is complex. That's why you love your cat but don't love your toaster. Your company, the way that it works, the P&L of your company is complicated, but your marriage is complex. All of the things that really are most important to you are complex experiences which are mediated in the right hemisphere of the brain. My marriage is incredibly complex, meaning I will never solve it. I mean, I'm going to be married for, God willing, 60 years. I will never solve my marriage. I mean, Esther loves me. I talked to her right before we started shooting, and she says, "Hey, tell John I say hi." And she says, "I love you." And I'm going to call her after we're done, and she might be like pissed at me. John, I don't know. I don't know.
Again, with the Spanish.
Well, I mean, that makes it more complex, truly. But that's why I love my marriage, is because it's not something I can solve. It's not an equation that I can solve. It's something that I have to live. It's a living thing that's mysterious. It's in the mysterious side of my brain. And when you fuse one flesh, as we talk about it in the Bible, people sort of interpret that as sexual or something. No. One flesh between husband and wife is a fusion of the right hemispheres of the brain, where together they make an antenna, like a nuclear sub with two keys to launch the missiles. It's an antenna to God. That's why, by the way, the most intimate thing that you can do with your wife has nothing to do with sex. It's praying together. That's the most intimate thing. I talk to couples who are super religious, and they've been married 50 years, and they don't pray in front of each other because it's too embarrassing.
It's so fun. I got a giant smile on my face. And the reason is, for the entirety of my relationship with Lisa, the thing that she is always saying is that she wants to smush heads with me.
That's what she means.
She's just like, I just wish, like she desires a closeness, and I'm kind of cerebral, but I'm not totally cerebral. But it's just so funny that
So here's how you do it. Here's how you do the head smush. Here's what she wants, because there's no words for it exactly. But let's get to the biology of how to do this, of how to adore her better.
Yeah, this is some tools that will be helpful to me.
Yeah. So
this is the selfish time.
Yeah. So there's basically 4 things that would save most marriages. Number 1 is you need to have more fun together. Most couples don't have, when they're especially on the rocks, they don't have fun together. They go to therapy. Ugh. And in therapy, that's like, okay, let's go over the grievances again. It's like dirt in a glass of water, and you're mixing it up. And you can't get it out when it's all mixed up in there, right? What you need to do is let it settle to the bottom, and then just pour a bucket of water into the glass, and all the dirt will come out spontaneously. Have more fun, more positive emotion together. Second, pray together, because you need this satellite uplink to God. You need to actually meld the right hemispheres of your brain. Number 3, complete eye contact every time you're talking. This is what she wants. Go to bed 10 minutes before you usually do, and you lie there and you talk to each other and you're staring into her eyes. Now, women get 3 times as much oxytocin as men. Women's brains produce 3 times as much oxytocin. What that means is that they're better at bonding, but it also means they're better at starving. That they'll starve because their oxytocin needs won't be met. And the best way for you to starve your wife and screw up your marriage is not looking at her in the eyes.
That's a really good tip.
And you just you're lying in bed and you're facing each other and you're on the pillow and you're having a conversation. I don't care if you're talking about her muffin recipe. You're staring at her in the eyes and you're filling her up. You're filling her up with the oxytocin that she needs, which is a gift from God. It's a gift, a neurobiological gift from God. Now, the 4th thing is ABT, always be touching. If you're together, you're touching. Part of that is that men really need to be touched, really need that touch. You know, when you're walking with your wife and you're downtown, right? And it's kind of cold, and she hooks her arm in yours. You know that feeling? And they don't know why we love that so much.
I think I have something wrong with me because I actually I've gotten better at this. I've been kind of not great about touch.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why.
Men ordinarily, and some people, some researchers think that it's because men get more vasopressin than oxytocin, and women get more oxytocin. Men get some. Men get more vasopressin, which makes you loyal and feel strong. And one of the ways that women do that is by holding onto your arm. That's one of the ways that they actually do that. So women need to do that more. And when you're in bed and you're gazing into each other's eyes, just hold hands.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is it's funny because we're not Gnostics. You and I, we're Christians. And Christians believe that it's body and soul, man.
Yeah,
it's
the whole
body
thing.
and soul. That your body is an incredibly holy thing, which is why you don't fill it up with garbage and take drugs. That's a sinful thing to do because that's a gift from God as well. And we're fused in this life between our bodies and our souls. That's our belief. And to suggest anything else is heretical, actually. But that means that we have an experience of the divine in our bodies. And that's understanding neurobiology, and the neurobiology of romantic love is critically important for us to, even in a religious sense, get the divine experience. I think that is our lot that we deserve and we need.
When we first met, one of the centerpieces of your focus on happiness was work.
Mm-hmm.
And this has become the harder landscape than it used to be, I think.
Yeah.
And it might become a dramatically harder landscape. It's hard to know these predictions about AI and automation, but let's imagine
predictions about technology and work have almost always been wrong.
Yeah. There's it's most of the jobs being done now. This is the funny thing is like, I can make all the arguments the classical liberals make, and I understand them and I agree with them. Like the notion that, hey, everyone used to do farming, along comes a tractor, and now only 2% do farming. Most of the jobs done by the 98% of people today would just seem like ridiculous if described to someone.
But we have 4% unemployment. Yeah.
But we have there was Nick Eberstadt from AEI, 7 million men that are permanently.
But the whole point is that we're not a nation of idle people just because technology changed.
We're not. But rate of change seems to matter. And it does. The work landscape is getting more difficult, and it's also less physical, which means it provides less opportunities for men, maybe than it used to.
Right.
And so how do you think about deriving happiness from work?
I think about deriving calling from work. I mean, which is meaning. So this is really a lot of the meaning work as well. If work is a calling, then work brings meaning. And so it's really the interesting thing in the research is how to make your work feel like it's something you're meant to do. And when you're thrown out of work, it's a really big problem. It's one of the reasons that people become so self-harming, so depressed and anxious when they're in a period of unemployment, is because their sense of meaning actually falls. And it's especially acute for men. So when some of the studies suggest that if the wife in a two-earner couple, if the wife is thrown out of work, the likelihood of divorce increases by 0%. Yeah. With a husband, it's more than 30% increase. Yeah. And it's, part of it is because he becomes less admirable, even though it's not his fault. And part of it is just because he likes life less and becomes less happy. And it's not that nobody wants to be married to a depressed person. It's not fun to be married to a depressed person. Is what it comes down to. It's catastrophic for a lot of guys, is what it comes down to. So the question is, what does it actually mean to find meaning in your work? And that's something that we've failed abysmally on in the education system.
No question about that.
Work has become homo economicus. We have the hustle culture and the culture of efficiency are additive to the problems that we have with technology to strip people of their sense of meaning. The workaholism that my students display, they think that if they work hard enough and make enough money, that meaning is going to find them. That's wrong. That's completely incorrect. Second, it leads people to marginalize the greatest source of work that brings meaning in most people's lives, which is becoming a parent. Becoming a dad is the most important meaning-filled job somebody can actually have. Yeah. And to tell people that, no, you're a work machine. And me too, guilty, man. I mean, you met me, I was the president of AEI. I worked 80 hours a week for 10 and a half years.
I remember you said you did something like 175 trips
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah, it was a lot. And I still do a whole lot, but I have protocols in place. I never travel on weekends, for example, and it's still not great, but it's because I still have this impulse to be special rather than happy. I want to be so special, you know. But
Oh, Arthur, you're status seeking even when you know that doesn't lead you anywhere good.
no. It's not even status. It's just specialness. You know, specialness. It's the special one. But anyway, this is, you know, our evolution is our evolution. You know, and we have to live in the moral aspiration space as opposed to the animal impulse space, and I'm working on that. At least I understand the problem. So this is a really, really important thing that we have to, as parents, to think about. It's interesting because two of my kids went to college and one didn't. And the one who didn't, the main reason was that Esther and I talked about how's he actually going to find who he is as a person? Do we really think that he's going to find answers to the questions like, why am I alive? For what would I give my life? By going to some dumb college and barely passing and hating it? No. And so he worked on a farm and joined the Marine Corps. And man, that boy's got meaning. That boy has answers to those questions. I've asked him, why are you alive? Because God made me to serve. Where'd you learn that? I don't know. For what would you give your life? He has a contract that he signed for what he'd give his life for. You know,
Technically.
his family, his fellow Marines in the United States of America, and our allies. It's serious business. But we don't have an education system that has any interest in doing anything except treating our kids. It's like factory farming of our children. And so we as parents have a real responsibility to look out for the fact that their productive activities in life, including their parenthood, that they're aligned with this search for meaning.
You know, one of the things, to what extent do you think are you saying seek work-life balance? Because that advice from older people to younger people,
Yeah.
I think is kind of
Well, it's like
I didn't have a work-life balance. I still, I have enough, but
No, you have what you have, John. I've known you for a long time. You have work-life integration, and that's the gold standard.
Yeah,
your work makes your life better, and your life makes your work better.
It is.
And if you have things that you're doing outside of your job that are weakening your job, or your job is weakening your family life, you don't have proper work-life integration. You don't need balance, you need integration, because your work is part of your life. To say work-life balance is to say that work isn't part of life, and that's nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, I met Lisa at work, so there's that, and we work together, and all. So it's
and also you're a creative, you're an admirable man because of your work, and that's actually what makes you a good husband and a happy person. It all hangs together.
But for the, it's interesting to hear you focus on the hustle culture element of what's gone wrong with education, because it's like there's multiple. That's one avenue, but the other is this sort of like focus on the self.
Yeah.
Focus on how do you feel. Like write the essay about how you feel. It's like,
Well, it's funny because
terrible assignment.
Of course, you know what it's stripping out the deep humanity in all sorts of different ways. One is to say that you're a very fine work machine, and the other is, which is not incompatible with that, is that you're a very fine work machine that's a bundle of emotions. You know, it's just like the worst of all possible worlds. You're not a bundle of emotions. You're a person with emotions, and you're a person who works. Here's the theme and comment. You're a person. You're a person. You're not a machine, and you're not a walking limbic system. And that's the important thing to keep in mind. See, the problem on both of those fronts, both hustle culture and feelings culture, is that it strips us of what it means to be a full human. It's fundamentally sort of anti-human in its way, right? With the multiplicity of experiences that we actually have and the things that we want as people. It's deeply, deeply sort of anti-spiritual in its way. It's desiccated. And that's a problem in mostly because that's antithetical to the search for meaning. That's antithetical to the kind of meaning that we want. It also says, by the way, since you're a bundle of emotions and we have to look after your emotions, that we're probably going to have to eliminate your negative emotions. That's what leads to the eliminationist approach to suffering. And that's just the worst. You know, the truth is you're not going to find the meaning of your life unless you find sacredness in your suffering. And that's one of the things that you find as you get older. You want to know what it means to be an adult? Is saying, I'm grateful for my suffering.
it's that the easiest way I think about that in a certain sense is like we are all going to have to deal with the loss of loved ones. Like it's inescapable.
Right.
And we're still here as a creature. So we have had this with us forever. Like death walks with us. It's an inescapable part of
part of life.
It's
a deeply sacred part of life.
Yeah, when you hear like the Bryan Johnson types talk about like
the tragedy of
just
death.
Don't die.
Yeah. I know Bryan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. Without violating confidence or whatever. Well, like, what's your take on him? I mean, as a conservative Catholic, I imagine I know and probably share it, but like, what do you think?
So it's no doubt philosophically we're not on the same page because I'm a conservative Catholic and he's not, right?
Yeah.
He was raised LDS. He was raised as a Mormon. They're not Mormons anymore. The Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
That's the official decree. So there are some differences, of course. There are differences in worldview, but there's a lot of things that are really admirable about Bryan Johnson. And I'll give you an example of that. That doesn't he's easy to caricature because of the way, he talks and acts.
Yeah. I think he's interesting. I'm not quick to caricature.
But not only interesting, this is something admirable about him. He says, we all could live better, maybe longer, but certainly better, but we don't know how. And somebody's got to take the lead and do a bunch of experiments on that. And I'm going to experiment on myself. And some of it's going to be a catastrophe. And some of it's not going to work. And some of it's going to probably be dangerous. But some of it's going to work. And if it works and it's safe, you might want to do it too. And so it's kind of a philanthropic thing that he's doing in its way. And, a place like, oh, man, no way. He just doesn't want to die. Of course he doesn't.
He's a walking human challenge trial.
Kind of, yeah. And of course it gets clicks to say don't die. But what I think Bryan, and I don't want to characterize him, Ryan will write in the comments here, okay? Is that he wants us to live better. He wants us all to live better. And that's very consistent with a lot of people I really love and respect, like Peter Attia, who lives right here. And I've done his stuff and collaborated with him. And his whole idea is, look, you're going to die. And Bryan Johnson knows you're going to die too. But I want you to have a better life with more love and activity in it so you can bless other people. That's why Peter talks about the marginal decade, which is the last decade of life. And depending on how you live and how you behave yourself, you're going to have a marginal decade. And it's either going to suck or it's going to be pretty good, right? And a lot of it's in your hands. And I think that's kind of the approach as well. Same thing with Dave Asprey, who's also here in Texas, here in Austin. That's what these guys want is, I know we're going to die, but let's make it better before we do. And make it better for everybody before we do. Because life is so sweet. Those guys are very pro-life in their way. I know they might hate to have their ideology characterized as pro-life, but Bryan Johnson is incredibly pro-life.
It's I was having a conversation yesterday actually, and because I think about these boys who are like sucked into various kinds of victim mindsets, and I know actually that like I can't directly reach most of them,
right?
Like with this show, like I know who watches. They look a lot like me and slightly younger.
They're men. What are your demographics?
Overwhelmingly male. I mean, I'm very grateful for everyone that watches. And when I get a message from somebody who's like a dad who's like, I shared this with my kids and it prompted a conversation, it's like you're validating my reason for getting up in the morning.
Right.
But I know it's pretty hard to reach your son because I'm 48 and we're in different places.
It's hard to reach younger people.
It's hard to reach younger. It's hard to reach this next generation, but when it comes to the pursuit of a mate, I hear you talk about pro-life, and like I feel like if you're like a young based guy that feels like you can't find any women, it's like maybe you should go to a bunch of pro-life rallies.
Yeah.
Because they're actually filled with a bunch of women who aren't like woke blue-haired people that you think you hate. Like there's something. I don't know how to empathize with what's going on. I don't know how much my life is too far away from these younger guys. I know my relationship with my son, but when I look out more broadly and think, how can I do good for them?
Yeah.
which I want to. I really do. I really want to. I was kind of rambling a little bit here, but it's like it's a struggle for me because because I know, like, clutching your pearls and being like you bunch of groypers. I don't think reaches them and doesn't work.
Yeah,
it doesn't work. That doesn't work.
It's fear-based. It's fear-based. It's not hate-based. Hate is downstream from fear. Fear is the opposite of love. Fear and love are opposites. And, Lao Tzu said that in the Tao Te Ching. And St. John the Apostle said that in his first letter, perfect love drives out fear. Unfortunately, perfect fear also drives out love. And so when you have fear, when you see fear and you want to fix it, and you see hatred and black pill behavior, if that's fear-based, it's fear about the future, it's nihilism about, you pour love on top of it. It's just you drown in love. And we need divine love and fatherly love and marital love and more love and friendship, all of it. That's what we need. I mean, that's what the world needs ultimately. And I sound like a 60s hippie here, man, and I'm credibly accused of such. But this is the most manly thing ever, is to respond to the hatred of the world with love, notwithstanding your feelings. And ultimately, of course, this is Aristotle's understanding of love as described by St. Thomas Aquinas in 1265 in the Summa Theologia. He defined love as to will the good of the other. It's so hard-edged. Nothing about feelings. There's nothing about... St. Thomas Aquinas could not care less what you feel. He was a total bad right?
Yeah. Super Aristotelian to the core.
Oh my gosh, yes. And he said to love is to will the good of the other. And Dr. King, Martin Luther King prayed a sermon on this in 1957, November 17th, 1957, at the Dexter Street Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, on Matthew 5:44, which is where Jesus said, love your enemies, right? And he said just this whole Thomistic idea. Jesus didn't say to like your enemies, because to like your enemies is a sentimental something. He said to love your enemies because only then can you redeem them. In other words, this is pretty manly stuff. Loving your enemies is the most manly thing that you can demonstrate to your son, and the most important thing that he can learn is to love notwithstanding his feelings. That's the important thing to do. And when you see his feelings enveloping him because of an unjust world and because of accusations that are untrue and all the things that will drive you into an adolescent rage, and quite frankly, into a 61-year-old rage in my case, the only answer is more love. And the only way you can bring it is deciding to do so, is making a commitment to do so, notwithstanding your feelings. And you better be a pretty strong person if you're going to be up to that task.
When we were making the movie together, there was this scene. I remember the conversation quite well. I've cited it to people a couple different times. We were driving around in the foothills of the Himalayas. We had this thing where we visited the Dalai Lama, which was completely crazy experience for me. And I asked you, I figured this is a good time. One of the things when you're making a documentary and you're off camera asking questions as a director, I'm thinking, is this moment visually and otherwise a good time to ask a particular question? Like, would this part of the conversation fit well here? So I asked you about your faith and your faith journey. And you sort of off the cuff said, I sometimes wondered if I'll ever feel it. And then I realized it doesn't matter. It's how you practice what you believe. And I fast forward to, I'm in the edit room and I'm like, Arthur goes to mass every morning. Is he saying he doesn't really feel his faith in this quote? And then I'm struggling with this in the edit. So I call you. Do you remember this conversation?
Yeah.
Do you remember what you said to me?
No.
I said, I think I understand what you're saying, but I want to make sure I understand it, because if I want to include this, I want it to be coherent, not be like a misunderstood moment. And you said, well, haven't you ever heard, dad gets you to church and mom gets you to heaven? It's like we're kind of cursed as a thing. women have this like high bandwidth connection to the divine.
That's because the right hemisphere of females' brains is generally stronger than it is for men. The mystical side of the female brain is more acutely developed. The left side, that's why men like things and women like people, right? And men like model trains and little girls talk about emotions.
Yeah.
Is because they're
men
more,
like markets and economics and systems thinking.
And so for us, it's trickier. It's trickier. We have a kind of a weak corpus callosum that takes us over to the right hemisphere of our brain, and it's kind of a wasteland over there. It can be really hard under those circumstances. But here's kind of how to think about it. So a lot of guys are probably watching us. They're like, I don't feel it. This whole religion thing, I don't feel it. So what? Here's the deal. We, in a feelings culture, have been propagandized to believe that when it comes to religion and many other parts of life, like marriage, first you need to feel, then you need to believe, and only then can you practice if you're a non-hypocritical individual. That's exactly backwards. First you practice, then you start to believe sometimes, and then very occasionally you'll feel. And that's a life of your own design. That's the startup life. That's your life as an enterprise. Who am I? I'm a Catholic. I don't feel it. I don't care. Because I'm a Catholic. This is my decision. This is who I'm made to be. The person that I want to be every single day, despite the person that I feel. Like, I don't drink alcohol either, but I feel like drinking. But I
know you have your obsessive tendencies.
I do.
So
I practice.
It's a good choice.
I practice non-drinking behavior. I usually believe it's right, and occasionally I'm glad I'm not drinking. and this is the approach to everything for the life of a self-managing individual. That's what it means to be a man, is somebody who can manage himself. And part of being a man for me is being in relationship to God, my Father, who loves me. Even though I don't feel that love all the time, I don't even feel his presence all the time. So I'm going to put myself in his presence, notwithstanding my feelings. And I have a whole bunch of intellectual beliefs that stem from my constant practice. And occasionally I have an epiphany or an experience or an emotional breakthrough, but I don't count on it, because if I tried to count on it, I'd never go to church. Look, if I had to count on my feelings, I wouldn't be married. I wouldn't have been married 34 years. I wouldn't have been married 34 days if I were counting on my feelings. Because love isn't a feeling. Faith isn't a feeling. Happiness isn't a feeling. These feelings are evidence of those things from time to time.
Have you felt it more since we had that conversation? This is maybe a little more than right around 10 years ago.
Yeah. As I get older, because I think my relationship with God, my friendship with God has deepened. And the way to do that, by the way, to get more feeling, you need more practice. It's not that you get more practice when you get more feeling. Remember the algorithm. Remember the correct self-managing algorithm. And 10 years ago, I went frequently to Mass. And when I left AEI in 2019, I walked the Camino de Santiago.
Yeah.
I mean, I was at wit's end, dude. I was stripped. And I was so tired, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if I had anything left because I had worked 80 hours a week for year after year after year, and I missed a lot of my kids growing up because of my stupid workaholism, et cetera. And so I did what Catholics have done when they want to answer a question they can't answer. I went for a long walk. That's what Catholics do, right? I walked the Camino de Santiago across northern Spain. I didn't do the whole 800K. I did the last 160 kilometers.
Okay.
With Esther. And I would have done the whole 800, but Esther's like, no. Walk for 33 days? Are you out of your mind? How much will you do? I'll do 8, grudgingly. Okay, so in the last 8 days. And you walk, and you walk, and you walk, and you walk. And the legend is, the belief is that when you ambulate, when you walk a pilgrimage, that's a metaphor for your life. And on the last day, you're walking yourself metaphorically into heaven, where all things, all truths will find you. You don't find truth in heaven. If you're lucky, you go to heaven and truth finds you in heaven. That's the belief. And the metaphor of that is the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela in northern Spain, that great medieval cathedral. And sure enough, on the 8th day, I said, Lord, what is my path? What do you want from me? And I believe that I understood that my path was to spend the rest of my life lifting people up and bringing them together in bonds of happiness and love, using science and ideas backed up by an understanding and friendship with God. that I wanted to bring the divine life to people through the earthly experience of love and happiness, and do it as a scientist.
When I first met Russ Roberts,
What a fantastic thinker.
just one of my favorite people.
Oh, he's phenomenal. Yeah.
He's a, economist, Orthodox Jew, deeply engaged in his Judaism. I asked him if his cerebral, philosophical, economic mind did war with his faith in God.
Yeah.
And he said yes. He said it's hard. How have you dealt with throughout this conversation? It's been infused with a kind of with a neuroscience that could sound mechanistic. It could sound like we're an accidental kind of meat puppet of evolved groupishness and selfish genes, and we have
no free will. There's a feeling of free will, but we don't have real free will.
Yeah, we have a feeling of knowing, and we have all these things, but they're all just sort of
feeling of knowing. Those are interesting conversation you had.
Yeah, really interesting. But it's just sort of this survival imperative playing out in a bunch of weird ways that lead us to make things like this microphone somehow, but I don't know why.
Yeah.
How has living in that part, which I guess is a lot of left brain, how has it done battle for you?
Catholics have worked this out. Aquinas worked this out. And he didn't have any of the neuroscience. He didn't know the neuroscience because people didn't. But he might as well have. Aquinas would almost certainly say, given the current state of scientific knowledge, that God gave you two hemispheres for a reason. And I think about it this way. You don't find evidence of the creator in the creation. I don't find evidence of Picasso the man by looking at a Picasso painting. But if I'm going to be a good scholar of Picasso, I need to know Picasso's life, and I need to know Picasso's paintings. But I don't look at a Picasso painting and go like, he's not in there. Sorry, he's not in there, so he doesn't exist. They're not at odds. The creator and the creation are different forms of knowledge that are gained in different ways, where iron sharpens iron, to quote the Proverbs, where you actually understand God better through the creation, and you appreciate the creation more by knowing God. And you don't get the information with the same empirical methods. Faith, which is largely a right hemisphere experience, is understood experientially in ways that the left hemisphere is understood empirically. And that's good. That's the way your brain is supposed to work. And so I'm telling you, it's like, and my father really helped me with this. I mean, there's a famous story of the first man to orbit the Earth, which was a Russian cosmonaut named German Titov. And German Titov came to the United States in 1962 because he opened the Seattle World's Fair, where the theme of the Seattle World's Fair was man in space. Because there was this craze. That's why the Space Needle in Seattle is called the Space Needle. Is because that was the theme of the World's Fair, and that was what it was built for. So German Titov is at the World's Fair, and he's at the Space Needle. And a reporter, he's a big worldwide celebrity, and a reporter asked him, he speaks English, a reporter asked him, so what did you see out there? And he spouted the Soviet atheist line perfectly. He said, I trained my telescope into outer space, I looked all day long, and I saw neither God nor angels. Which is the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. As my father would say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That's like saying, I didn't find J.K. Rowling in a Harry Potter book. That's what that's like saying. It's dumb. It doesn't even make any sense because they're different species of knowledge with different ways of understanding, and you're not truly understanding one without trying to understand the other. You need the divine to understand your science, in my view. This is a Thomistic perspective.
I've never really found this argument that like faith and reason are in conflict to be all that potent. It's always even, and I'm not remotely as deeply read into our texts as you are. I'm like a baby on the journey in comparison.
We all are. There's a Catholic Church. Are you kidding me?
I know. It's like 2,000 years of
working on a PhD for your whole life in 7 lifetimes or something.
But it's always struck me as sort of like cheap pop history version of addressing faith.
Yeah. And scientism fundamentally. To say that we make a lot of light of creationism, these anti-science religious views, but scientism is kind of like that. in its way. It's like there's really only one hemisphere up here. There's only one way of seeing things. It's on the reason side, and the faith side doesn't actually exist. I'm going to ignore it because I don't quite understand it, which is to say I'm going to live on the faith side and the science side is a bunch of heretical nonsense. No. Neither is it, as far as I'm concerned, neither one of those points of view is defensible.
Has the Enlightenment gone too far?
That's a small question. So the Enlightenment, what say you, sir?
Well, I mean, without going into like another hour.
Yeah.
I mean, like I do feel like we are at this moment where your boys might be
more skeptical of the Enlightenment
than you and me. I find myself like. And like I find myself sometimes saying, make the Middle Ages great again. And but that's the heady way of saying it. There's all these thinkers and stuff, post-liberals, people who feel like, look, this like modernity has failed us. There's a lot of babies they want to throw out with the bathwater when they say that, because it's like, last time I checked, pre-modern life sucked real bad. Like a lot of dead kids that you didn't want to die.
Sorry, you got a sliver. You're going to die.
Right. It's like, so a lot is taken for granted in that. But where might there be a little bit of truth? Yeah.
So we have to take seriously some truly great thinkers of our time who have a post-liberal viewpoint and are very serious intellectuals. And by the way, they share our faith. Like Patrick Deneen at Notre Dame, that guy's potent. That guy's a good thinker. You've got to take him seriously, whether you agree with him or not.
Yeah, Mike Munger's been like, you got to read Patrick just to contend with him.
Just to contend with him, is also you'll admire him. You'll admire him. And he's a really admirable intellectual, I have to say. And if you don't, then you're no better than a sort of a cancel culture warrior on a campus who says, I feel triggered by these capitalism ideas or something. It's just not helpful.
Yeah.
It's also not intellectually respectable. And it's not that fun is what it comes down to. We have to recognize that, once again, if you're a 0-100 person on any ideology, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong because there's trade-offs in anything we do. We believe as Catholics, there's only one thing that doesn't have a trade-off, and that's heaven. Right? That's the only thing.
Oh, yeah. It's the only utopia that's a real utopia.
Yeah, there's the only thing that doesn't have a rival fallacy. It's the only thing where you don't like, pyramids, I thought they were bigger.
I don't know. What's the rival fallacy?
The rival fallacy is the belief that since progress toward a goal is so sweet, that when you arrive at the goal, it will be pure sweetness. This is the reason that Olympic gold medalists, they suffer a clinical depression typically after they win their gold medal. Because your emotions reset, because your limbic system is there to give you a warning of threats and opportunities, not to give you a permanently nice day.
This is the striving problem.
Exactly. It's not how the brain is designed. And so, but the belief is what the belief that the arrival will be the ultimate bliss is how Mother Nature tricked you into staying in the hunt. Mick Jagger says, I can't get no satisfaction. That's wrong. You can. The problem is you can't keep no satisfaction. That's what he should have said. That's why I try and I try and I try it, because I can't keep no satisfaction. Well, you can in heaven. That's what we believe. And everybody watching us who's not religious is like, what? I guess that. But
yeah,
okay.
Sure.
But one way or the other, we might be wrong. We do know, we all agree you can't keep no satisfaction on earth.
Yeah.
Is what it comes down to. And that's a really critical thing to point out to people so you can manage their expectations about how to live a happy life fundamentally. So what was your question?
Well, I
went off on a tangent.
No. Well, but I think what it is when I say like has the Enlightenment gone too far?
So
has materialism, material progress?
Yeah. So back on that once again, since you can't keep no satisfaction and nothing is perfect. Yes, the Enlightenment has gone too far, and yes, the Enlightenment is awesome, and those are not mutually exclusive ideas. On the contrary, look, what the Enlightenment fundamentally did, especially in the American version of the Enlightenment, Benjamin Franklin, good old Tom Jefferson, John Adams, all those, hoary old figures.
The best,
but not perfect, to be sure. But one of the things that they pointed out, especially Benjamin Franklin, is that we can move beyond might makes right. We can move beyond adjudicating our disputes with coercion by adding in two new ideas, negotiation and persuasion. The idea that you can have rule of law that makes it so that if John and Arthur fundamentally disagree on something, Arthur's not allowed to kill John. Then what we're left with, or if there's a dispute over property, I'm not allowed to kill you over it. We either have to negotiate or I mean, if it's criminal, then there's coercion. But if it's not, then it's a negotiation or persuasion. I have to persuade you to do something different. And if I do persuade you, it's a win-win because you have a new point of view that's better than your old point of view. That's a fruit of the Enlightenment. That's an Enlightenment way of thinking. And that's a beautiful thing. On the other hand, one of the fruits of the Enlightenment is this cult of scientism. Is the whole idea that rationality is going to trump everything else and slowly going to push out religion from our lives. And the sooner the better, because there are these underlying truths, and the more science that we learn, the more we're going to get that. That led to scientific socialism, that led to, and its minor variants in the United States, like Woodrow Wilson's scientific public administration, which led to the massive bureaucratic state that's done so much harm in our lives.
I just revisited that piece recently in a video because
it's incredible.
We live in his world.
Yeah, and that was a kind of an Enlightenment scientific understanding. Scientific socialism, of course, has killed hundreds of millions of people. That's no joke. The idea that you can scientifically set up a society so that we can be like ants. Or no, we can be like machines if we have exactly the right laws and policies and incentives.
Well, one way of debunking socialism, you mentioned the unpredictability of a football game.
Yeah,
like that is why socialism can't work
because of complexity.
Yeah, like a football game isn't even that complex.
Right,
it's a fixed number of people with a very simple rule set.
Right,
in a very small area.
Right.
And we have all the data of all of the individual players' past performance. That's nothing like an economy, even a small economy. And yet we can't predict the outcome. So somehow central planners will plan a society of tens or hundreds of millions of people. It's ridiculous.
Well, that's how Gosplan worked in the Soviet Union. But you know how they calibrated the prices for Gosplan is they looked at markets in the United States.
Yeah, they imported like Sears Roebuck catalogs.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, they were old, whirly-dirly mainframe type computers, and they were just feeding in numbers from the American economy about what price signals were so that they could figure out their Gosplan. They were injecting complexity into their complicated system. But this is the problem in life. Complicated solutions don't solve complex problems. A complicated solution like a dating app won't solve the complex problem with your need for love. No, even more. The complicated solution of digital will never solve your need to actually be loved. Your toaster isn't a good substitute for your cat. It isn't, no matter how many toasters and how good the toasters are. And that's the big thing to actually keep in mind. That the argument about socialism is it's a complicated solution to social problems. And we live in a complex world, and that's the beauty of the world that we actually live in. And what does faith do? Faith deals with the complexity of society. It treats us as complex beings with right hemispheres to our brains. It treats us the way that we need to be treated and the way that we've developed. It's organic. It's natural. And everything that we do to try to adjudicate our lives morally, besides something as metaphysical, physical, I should say, left brain, is going to be inadequate. That's the reason that people are always left hungry until they're ultimately fed what they deeply need.
When my son, Mateo, I can't remember exactly when I started giving this advice. It might have been at junior year of high school, or it might have been his senior year. But I found myself giving him essentially one piece of advice.
Oh, good. What is it?
Well, and it was in the spirit of complex problems, actually, simple rules are probably the best you've got.
Yeah.
Find a woman that shares your values and team up with her.
Right. Yeah.
And the rest will work itself out.
Yeah.
Be worthy of that person. Find a woman that shares your values and makes you want to be the best version of yourself.
Right. Yeah. And another way to put this is for young men, you're on a pilgrimage. Your life is a pilgrimage. Proximately in this life, what are you looking for? You're looking for the right woman, and you're looking for God. You're looking for God and the right woman. And all will be well. Julian of Norwich, the anchoress, the nun from the 13th century, the first woman published in the English language. And her most famous verse is, this is during the bubonic plague and wars. And it's and she's stuck in a castle someplace. And her most famous verse is, all will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well. But what are they?
In the middle of the dark age bubonic plague.
But what was she saying? That's if you have love. That's if you have love. And the two kinds of love that you need, young men, is the love of your soulmate and the love of God. then all manner of things will be well.
I can't think of a better place to end than there. So I will leave us with my question I ask each guest, the first time especially. Although this doesn't feel like the first time for
No,
us.
it's a 10-year conversation.
The show is called Dad Saves America
Yeah.
for two reasons. One, I think America is beautiful and worth saving.
Yeah.
Two, I think as a man, that role, dad, is a heroic role. And it's probably the one where the most saving work can be done as a man. How do you think about your role in the American story, more broadly?
My role as a person or my role as a dad?
Both.
As a dad, my role is to be the man I want my sons to be. Just to be the man every day and everything I say and everything I think. To be thinking the things I want my sons to think and to do the things I want my sons to do. To just be that person. And I fail constantly. And sometimes when I'm making a decision, I say, how would I feel if Carlos did that? And then I think, it raises the stakes. And I think that this scales up. I think this scales up. We've talked a lot about religion, and a lot of people who are watching us are not religious, and this is not a religious point at all, actually. If we were all trying to be the men we want our sons to be, that would save America.
That is absolutely true.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks for being on Dad Saves America, Arthur.
I love it.